Hi, I'm Susan Krumdyke, and I want to tell you a bit about my journey to where I am today, a professor of mechanical engineering, working in a field that I pioneered, and with more than 20 PhD students and collaborators, really hope to change future possibilities. How did I start in engineering? Why would I choose engineering? Well, to tell you the truth, I didn't even know what engineering was. I was really interested in anthropology and archaeology, like people, humans, like who are we? How do we organize ourselves, and why do we do the things we do? And where I grew up was surrounded by Indian ruins, ruins of an ancient civilization that wasn't there anymore. And so that question of where did they go? What happened? Why didn't it keep working? What's not sustainable? We're talking about Native Americans. How were they not sustainable? And when I was a kid, we had the oil crisis. Yeah, we saw images on television of people in line and getting quite angry and upset and worried about not getting fuel. And I grew up in a really rural area, village of 800 people. And in that village, it was interesting because people talked about how much fuel there was at the one fuel station that we had, and why it was fair that people were only buying a small amount, just what they needed. And if people were going over the mountains to the town that had a doctor and a grocery store, that they would take other people with them and share rides. And so it was just interesting to me that some people were managing a crisis by communicating and by understanding how much resource there was and how to share it. And other people were not managing a crisis at all. And then a few years later, a big coal-fired power plant was built south of us, and we had smog and we couldn't see across the landscapes anymore. And the fish started dying and the salamanders started dying in the alpine lakes. And I remember asking a high school physics teacher, who builds those power plants like that? I mean, why did they do that? They're destroying our land here. And well, he said that's mechanical engineers. They're building it the way that they know how. And to me, in order to preserve our human systems, I thought we need to figure out how to make engineering do that, because otherwise it destroys things. So I went into engineering. I was able to do that because I got scholarships. I was a top student, and I was a top student on purpose. I knew I needed scholarships in order to be able to afford to go to school. I was good at math and science, and I did not opt out of the physics and the advanced math. Most of the girls in my class did. In fact, okay, all of them did. And for some reason, I don't know, I wasn't bothered by being in the class with geeky guys. It was a really small school anyway, and yeah. And then when I got to university, I did fine there. I know there weren't very many girls in engineering and mechanical engineering in the 80s. And I think now this is where I want to encourage girls to get into physics and math and science and engineering, because we need the perspective that women bring to this field. We really do need it. We need a willingness to look at things in complexity. We need a willingness to ask, should we be doing that? And I don't see that among my male colleagues. They're very happy to work on whatever the task is, very task-oriented. Whereas the women that I've worked with in sustainability and energy and environmental protection and air pollution and renewable energy have been much more about making the whole system work for everybody. So we definitely need women to come into this field. And I think part of why the very high ratio of men to women didn't bother me was because I grew up with 4 brothers. And so I'm kind of immune to testosterone. And well, maybe that's not fair. But just think about that. Don't let boys bother you. They're trying to grow up. It takes them a really long time. Just get on with it. Be friendly and feel sorry for them, basically. All right. So then I got done with my undergraduate and was the top of my class at University of Colorado at Boulder. And I was recruited for military engineering. In fact, that's a big field for mechanical engineers. Weapons. Don't want to do that, actually. There's enough people working on weapons. There really is. I wanted to work on renewable energy so I could save the world. And so I went to do a master's degree because to work in energy engineering, you really have to upskill. Have to do a master's degree. So I did that and got to learn all about solar energy and how to make buildings efficient and wind and biofuels. And then I really thought, okay, but we can't just rely on having more renewables. There's something else that has to happen, and it has to be change of what we are doing. And I don't think I can do that from within the field the way it is. And so I decided to pursue a doctorate because if I was a professor, then maybe I could have a say in changing things. So I did my PhD and finished that up. And then just looking around me in the United States, thinking, how do we work on the questions of what we would do to reduce the amount of fossil fuel we use and to reduce the amount of materials that we use and to reduce the amount of stuff we consume and waste we produce. And what field even is that? And I don't think that the United States will be the ones to figure that out because nobody's asking the questions. And I found a job opening at Canterbury University in New Zealand, off the end of the planet. They're not even on most maps. And I thought, okay, well, if you go to a little country at the end of the world, way off the supply chains, surely it'll make sense to ask what happens. What would you do? How would you do it? And that's what I've been doing for 20 years here in New Zealand. And I have actually created a whole new field called transition engineering. I've written a textbook on it and teaching classes on it. I'm a co-founder of the Global Association for Transition Engineering, which is actually set up in the UK. And working with a lot of people, just really trying to get this way of working where we change the things that are unsustainable. It does work, so there is hope. So I tell you what, sign up now. Do any undergraduate degree, it doesn't matter, because everything we engineer, everything we do now has to change. So look me up once you get your engineering degree done, and we'll train you up in transition engineering, and you can change the future.